constantly to this day hear the question, if Batman and Superman got into a fight, who would win? Until getting into Miller's head writing this adaptation, I always argued that it was Superman. One of these guys can just flick him with his finger and the other one can't.
I never, for a moment, since the first day I read comic books, ever believed Superman would beat Batman in a battle. Batman is the superhero with no superpowers, and he can outthink any of his foes.
It's their world and they won't stand for you anymore. If it isn't me, it'll just be someone else.
Really? Who do they send after you?
Superman is hard to write for. He's hard to come up with threats for. It's hard to make him feel human.
He was just a Boy Scout. He was just doing the idealized moral good.
Since the early Siegel and Schuster Superman, he'd been the symbol of patriotism.
So many of us feel that the reading of Superman stories impacted our own personal moral codes. That's a huge positive impact on at least a generation, if not more.
When you think about this book back in its historical context, the idea of vilifying Superman was crazy. Superman kills more people than Joker in this story, certainly, and implied in the fact that he is the war machine of the president, but he gets to sleep at night because he's been given permission to do it.
It's certainly worth asking whether he's really the champion of the people when he's causing all of these problems at the same time.
He's the only superhero in the DC universe who is allowed to continue to fight evil. All the rest of them have been put out of commission, including Batman.
They're using his name. He could at least release a clear statement against what they're doing.
The Batman doesn't exactly come out with statements to the press.
No, he can't, because he's an outlaw.
At a climactic point in the story, Ronald Reagan says, okay, you have to go take care of this Batman guy now because he's a problem. And, you know, Superman doesn't just go out and just like, I mean, he could just go out there with one blast of heat vision and Batman would just be a stain. But he doesn't. It's a lot more complex and more interesting than just saying, you know, Superman's just, you know, the stooge.
Well, I think part of what Frank did was he was preaching about superheroes. I mean, there was a point where this story and Watchmen are both considered deconstructing what it means to be a superhero.
It's what Frank Miller was trying to get away from and break away from, was the sense of superheroes being used for nothing other than to tell stories about superheroes doing superhero things. You know, and you can say they can talk about politics, they can talk about sex, they can talk about fear. Here's what we can do, here's what they can do, I'm going to prove it to you.
In terms of stories from antiquity, heroic characters that we would associate with figures like Batman, Superman, the one thing that immediately jumps to mind is the conflict between Zeus, the king of gods, and Prometheus. Prometheus is a kind of champion of the people, but he also wants to kind of keep his distance. Whereas Zeus's approach to the aiding of mankind is slightly more exposed. He wants to be of aid. He wants to, you know, give them things, but mostly because it's going to redound to his credit. I think the analogy of Prometheus Batman is interesting because Batman does not want to become a national hero. Right? He does not want to become the people's champion, unlike Superman, who kind of embraces the role, right, of savior.
With Prometheus and Zeus, I don't think it's as valid as Achilles and Odysseus, because Achilles had superpowers. Odysseus was just a smart guy. He was really clever and really brave and really determined. So I think there's an exact analogy between Superman and Batman and those two Homeric heroes.
And I think that Frank, in his deconstruction of Batman and the superhero in The Dark Knight Returns, was taking a severe look at what is justice. Who determines what justice is? Whose interpretation of justice is the right one? Is it Superman's or is it Batman's?
What's really clear is Miller's kind of distrust of illegitimate authority in all of its forms. The government is clearly an illegitimate authority. The media is clearly buffoons. And one of the themes that sort of unfolds in the course of this book, of Dark Knight, is the question, well, where does the one true authority come from?
You say you answer to some sort of authority. They only want me dead because I'm an embarrassment. Because I do what they can't. What kind of authority is that?
Superman needs the permission of the government. And if the government is doing it for the wrong reasons, if the government is doing it for self-preservation or to avoid embarrassment, well, then what kind of authority is that? And therefore, what does Superman represent? Whereas Batman, following his own moral code, then becomes the one legitimate authority in the story.
It's an accepted and perfectly legitimate convention of heroic fiction that the hero either dies or wins. It doesn't become heroic melodrama if he goes down to defeat.
What I came around to believing at the end of doing this adaptation is, no, if Batman and Superman got into a fight, Batman's the one who would win. The reason is that of the two, Batman's the only one who would be willing to do what's necessary to win that fight.
If Batman allowed himself to actually get defeated by Superman, that would be a failure. That would be, that would be the end of Batman.
I didn't have to go easy on you. A different binding agent, a stronger mix. I want you to remember that. I wanted to remind you to stay out of my way. In all the years to come, in your most private moments, I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
What's really interesting about that fight, given this statement that Batman's the one of the two who's willing to really kill and really go the distance, is that in fact he never really intended to. He never intended to die, he never intended to kill, and that what he's really doing, and this is even more to the point of Batman's superiority over Superman, is he's outsmarting him. Batman is putting on theater. He's faking his death, all as part of giving Superman the cover story necessary.
The whole fight was staged. The whole fight was there for Reagan and friends to see, and it wasn't the ultimate fight because they didn't really mean it.
Basically, the message of that whole fight that Batman leaves Superman with is everything will be better off if we just stay out of each other's way. So I'm going to do this new version of my work that's going to give you the out to not have to mess with me, and I won't mess with you, and we'll be okay.
The bottom line is that Superman's in on the outcome. He knows that Batman's not dead. He knows that the fight isn't going to have a conclusion. Superman's in on helping Batman set up the future. He may be fine with letting Ronald Reagan think he killed Batman, but he found a way to be Superman at the end of the story.